Welcome to Men's Health 365, where we explore evidence-based strategies to optimize your health, vitality, and sexual function after 60. I'm your host, and today we're covering a critical topic that could be the difference between Viagra working effectively or leaving you frustrated and disappointed, the timing of when you take it. Most doctors simply tell you to take Viagra 30 to 60 minutes before sexual activity, but what they don't tell you is that there are specific times of day when Viagra is significantly less effective, times when it's more likely to cause side effects, and times when it can even be dangerous. If you've been taking Viagra and finding it doesn't work as well as expected, or if you're experiencing problematic side effects, the timing of when you take it might be the issue. What I'm about to reveal could transform your experience with this medication and restore the effectiveness you were hoping for. Before we dive into the worst timing and the optimal timing, let me share Donald's story. At 62, this sales manager from Atlanta had been prescribed sildenafil for erectile dysfunction about 6 months earlier. His doctor gave him standard instructions. Take one 50-milligram tablet 30 to 60 minutes before sexual activity. Donald tried the medication multiple times over several months, but his experience was consistently disappointing. Sometimes it worked okay, but other times it barely worked at all, Donald told me. And I was getting terrible headaches, facial flushing, and indigestion almost every time I took it. The side effects were so bad that I was starting to avoid intimacy altogether because I dreaded how I'd feel afterward. I couldn't figure out why the medication was so inconsistent and why the side effects were so severe. When I asked Donald detailed questions about exactly when he was taking the medication, a pattern emerged. Donald and his wife typically had intimate time in the evenings after dinner. Donald would take his Viagra dose right after dinner, then wait the recommended hour before initiating intimacy. What Donald didn't know was that he was taking Viagra at one of the worst possible times, immediately after a large, fatty meal. This single timing mistake was dramatically reducing the medication's effectiveness and amplifying the side effects he experienced. Once we corrected the timing and implemented several other optimization strategies, Donald's experience with Viagra transformed completely. "It's like I'm taking a different medication," he said. "It works consistently now. The side effects are minimal and my confidence has returned." I had no idea that when I took it mattered so much. The worst time of day to take Viagra? After large or fatty meals. The absolute worst time to take Viagra is immediately after eating a large meal, particularly one that's high in fat. This is the single most common mistake men make that sabotages the medication's effectiveness. Research published in the Journal of Clinical Pharmacology has documented that food, especially fatty food, significantly delays and reduces the absorption of sildenafil. When you take Viagra on a full stomach, particularly after a fatty meal, several things happen that dramatically impair the medication's effectiveness. First, absorption is delayed by 1 to 2 hours or more. Viagra is absorbed primarily in the small intestine, and when your stomach is full of food, the medication sits in your stomach much longer before reaching the intestine where absorption occurs. Research shows that taking Viagra after a high-fat meal can delay the time to peak blood concentration from 1 hour on an empty stomach to 2 to 3 hours after a fatty meal. This means if you're expecting the medication to work in 60 minutes, it may not reach effective levels for 2 to 3 hours, creating a frustrating waiting period and potentially missing your window of opportunity for intimacy. Second, the amount of medication absorbed is significantly reduced. Fat in your digestive system interferes with the absorption of sildenafil, meaning less medication gets into your bloodstream. Research in clinical pharmacokinetics has documented that a high-fat meal can reduce sildenafil bioavailability by up to 29%. This means if you take a 50-milligram dose after a fatty meal, you might only get the equivalent of 35 milligrams into your bloodstream. If you're already using the minimum effective dose, this reduction can mean the difference between the medication working or not working at all. Third, the peak concentration achieved is lower. Not only does less medication get absorbed overall, but the maximum blood concentration reached is significantly lower after a fatty meal. Research shows peak concentration can be reduced by 20 to 40% depending on the fat content of the meal. Since Viagra's effectiveness depends on reaching adequate blood concentrations, this reduction can dramatically impair erectile response. Fourth, the variability in response increases. When you take Viagra on an empty stomach, the absorption is predictable and consistent. After meals, absorption becomes highly variable, depending on exactly what and how much you ate, how much fat was in the meal, how quickly your stomach empties, and individual factors. This variability means the medication might work well one time and poorly the next time, creating unpredictability that adds to performance anxiety. Donald's pattern was taking Viagra right after dinner, which typically included a substantial meal with meat, potatoes, or pasta with butter or oil, and often dessert, a high-fat, high-calorie meal that sat heavily in his stomach. He'd take his Viagra at 7 p.m. after finishing dinner, expect it to work by 8 p.m., but find that it often took until 9 or 10 p.m. to feel any effect, by which time his wife was tired and the moment had passed. The delayed and reduced absorption was sabotaging his intimate life. Other bad times to take Viagra. Beyond the post-meal timing issue, there are several other times when taking Viagra is problematic. Second worst time is late at night before bed when you're already tired. While the food timing isn't an issue if you haven't eaten recently, taking Viagra late at night when you're exhausted creates other problems. Fatigue significantly impairs sexual function independent of erectile medication. Your libido is lower when you're tired, your arousal is blunted, your ability to focus on sexual stimuli is reduced, and your overall sexual response is diminished. Research in the Journal of Sexual Medicine has documented that fatigue is a major contributor to erectile dysfunction and reduced sexual satisfaction, and no medication can fully overcome the effects of exhaustion. Additionally, if you take Viagra late at night and it causes side effects like headache or indigestion, these can interfere with your sleep, leading to poor sleep quality that worsens sexual function the next day and subsequent days. Donald occasionally took Viagra at 10:30 or 11 p.m. when he and his wife had a rare opportunity for late-night intimacy, but he found that even when the medication worked, his fatigue blunted his enjoyment, and the side effects often kept him awake afterward, creating a miserable night. Third worst time is when you're dehydrated. Dehydration impairs the medication's effectiveness and increases the likelihood and severity of side effects. Sildenafil causes vasodilation throughout your body, not just in the penis. This vasodilation can cause mild drops in blood pressure, which normally aren't problematic. However, when you're dehydrated, you already have reduced blood volume, and the vasodilation on top of dehydration can cause more significant blood pressure drops, leading to dizziness, lightheadedness, headaches, and even fainting in extreme cases. Research in clinical pharmacology has documented that dehydration increases the side effect profile of PDE5 inhibitors. Fourth worst time is when you've been drinking alcohol. Alcohol is a central nervous system depressant that impairs sexual arousal, delays orgasm, and can cause erectile dysfunction on its own. Combining alcohol with Viagra creates additive effects that can be problematic. Both substances cause vasodilation and can lower blood pressure. When combined, the blood pressure lowering effects are amplified, potentially causing dangerous drops in blood pressure, severe dizziness, and fainting. Research in the International Journal of Impotence Research has documented that alcohol significantly reduces the effectiveness of PDE5 inhibitors and increases side effects. Men who drink heavily before taking Viagra often find it doesn't work at all, and they experience worse side effects. Fifth worst time is when you're taking certain medications or supplements without knowing the interactions. Taking Viagra when you're on nitrate medications for chest pain is extremely dangerous and can cause life-threatening drops in blood pressure. Taking Viagra with alpha blockers for prostate enlargement requires careful dosing and timing to avoid dangerous blood pressure drops. Taking Viagra with certain antibiotics, antifungals, or HIV medications that affect liver enzymes can dramatically increase sildenafil blood levels, causing severe side effects. Donald wasn't taking any of these medications, but many men are, and timing becomes even more critical when drug interactions are involved. The optimal times to take Viagra. Now let me tell you the optimal times to take Viagra for maximum effectiveness and minimum side effects. Best time number 1 is on an empty stomach, at least 2 to 3 hours after eating and at least 30 minutes before eating. This ensures rapid, complete absorption with predictable timing. Research shows that taking sildenafil on an empty stomach results in peak blood concentrations in approximately 60 minutes, with effects typically noticeable within 30 to 45 minutes for most men. The medication works most reliably and consistently when taken this way. For Donald, we restructured his timing completely. Instead of taking Viagra after dinner, he began taking it in the late afternoon, around 4 or 5 p.m., several hours after lunch and before dinner. He and his wife shifted their intimate time to early evening before dinner, around 5:30 or 6 p.m. This timing meant Donald took Viagra on an empty stomach, allowing rapid and complete absorption. The medication reached peak effectiveness by 5:30 to 6 p.m., perfectly timing with their intimate window. They'd have intimate time, then have dinner together afterward, which actually became a pleasant ritual. This simple timing change dramatically improved the medication's effectiveness. Best time number 2 is in the morning, if morning intimacy is an option. Many couples find morning intimacy appealing. Both partners are rested, testosterone levels are naturally highest in the morning for men, and there are fewer competing demands on time and energy. Taking Viagra in the morning, ideally on an empty stomach before breakfast, or at least 90 minutes after a light breakfast, provides excellent conditions for effectiveness. Morning dosing also means any side effects like headache occur during the day when they're less likely to interfere with sleep. Research in Chronobiology International has documented that circadian rhythms affect drug metabolism and response, and morning dosing of many medications provides optimal effectiveness. Best time number 3 is timing the dose to coincide with natural testosterone peaks. Testosterone levels follow a circadian rhythm, typically peaking in the early morning between 6 and 9 a.m. and remaining elevated until early afternoon, then declining in the evening. Timing Viagra to coincide with higher natural testosterone levels can enhance overall sexual response because testosterone supports libido, arousal, and the neurological pathways involved in erection. For Donald, the late afternoon dosing still coincided with reasonably elevated testosterone levels, certainly higher than late evening. Best time number 4 is when you're well hydrated, but not immediately after drinking large amounts of fluid. Adequate hydration supports cardiovascular function, blood volume, and the vasodilation effects of Viagra. However, drinking a very large amount of water right before taking Viagra can dilute stomach acid and delay absorption somewhat. The optimal approach is to maintain good hydration throughout the day, be well hydrated when you take Viagra, but not chug a huge amount of water at the same time you take the pill. Donald ensured he was drinking adequate water throughout the day, aiming for 8 glasses, so he was well hydrated but not overloaded when taking Viagra. Best time number 5 is when you're rested and relaxed, not stressed or exhausted. While you can't always control when intimacy opportunities arise, to the extent possible, planning intimate time when you're rested rather than exhausted, and when you're relaxed rather than stressed, significantly improves sexual response. The psychological and neurological state you're in when taking Viagra greatly influences its effectiveness. Research consistently shows that stress, anxiety, and fatigue impair sexual function, even when physiological erectile capacity is adequate. Donald and his wife began intentionally scheduling intimate time for early evenings, on days when Donald's work schedule was lighter, ensuring he wasn't exhausted or stressed. Additional optimization strategies. Beyond timing, I taught Donald several additional strategies to optimize Viagra's effectiveness. First, consistent dosing schedule. Rather than taking Viagra sporadically only when planning intimacy, some men benefit from taking it on a more regular schedule. Research has suggested that regular low-dose daily PDE5 inhibitor use may improve endothelial function and erectile response over time beyond the acute medication effects. We didn't put Donald on daily dosing, but we did establish a consistent pattern. He knew that on certain evenings each week, he'd take Viagra in the late afternoon, creating predictability and reducing performance anxiety. Second, nitric oxide boosting nutrition. Viagra works by preventing the breakdown of nitric oxide, but if you're not producing much nitric oxide in the first place, the medication has less to work with. Donald added foods rich in nitrates, including beets, arugula, spinach, and leafy greens that increase nitric oxide production. He also added L-citrulline supplementation, 3 grams daily, which converts to L-arginine and increases nitric oxide synthesis. Research in urology has shown that combining L-citrulline with low-dose PDE5 inhibitors produces better results than either alone. Third, cardiovascular exercise. Regular aerobic exercise improves endothelial function, increases baseline nitric oxide production, improves cardiovascular health, and enhances erectile function independent of medication. Donald committed to 30 minutes of brisk walking or cycling 5 days per week. Research in the Journal of Sexual Medicine has documented that regular aerobic exercise significantly improves erectile function and enhances the effectiveness of PDE5 inhibitors. Fourth, stress management. Chronic stress activates the sympathetic nervous system, which inhibits erection and increases cortisol, which suppresses testosterone. Donald implemented 10 minutes of daily mindfulness meditation and deep breathing exercises. This reduced his baseline stress and anxiety, particularly performance anxiety around sex, which had been contributing to his erectile difficulties. Fifth, adequate sleep. Sleep deprivation suppresses testosterone, impairs vascular function, and reduces sexual desire and performance. Donald prioritized 7 to 8 hours of sleep nightly, which improved his energy, mood, and sexual function. Sixth, limiting alcohol. Donald had been having 2 or 3 drinks with dinner on evenings when he anticipated intimacy, thinking it would help him relax. Instead, it was impairing his sexual function and amplifying Viagra side effects. He reduced to 1 drink maximum on intimate evenings, taken after intimacy rather than before. This single change notably improved both medication effectiveness and his sexual performance. Seventh, communication with his partner. Donald and his wife openly discussed the timing changes, the medication, and their intimate life. This reduced pressure and anxiety, allowed them to plan timing that worked for both of them, and strengthened their emotional connection, all of which enhanced their sexual experiences. Donald's transformation. After implementing these timing optimizations and supporting strategies, Donald's experience with Viagra transformed completely. Within 2 weeks of the new protocol, he noticed that the medication was working consistently. Within 1 month, he reported that Viagra was now reliably effective. He could consistently achieve erections firm enough for satisfying intercourse. The side effects he'd been experiencing, severe headaches, facial flushing, and indigestion, were dramatically reduced. By taking the medication on an empty stomach, staying well hydrated, and avoiding alcohol, the side effects became minimal and tolerable. The predictability of response improved dramatically. Instead of wondering whether the medication would work each time, Donald now knew it would work consistently, which reduced his performance anxiety substantially. His confidence returned. His relationship with his wife improved as intimacy became pleasurable rather than stressful and frustrating. After 3 months, Donald was using Viagra successfully twice per week with consistent good results. After 6 months, his overall sexual function had improved to the point where he occasionally didn't need medication at all, likely because the combination of improved cardiovascular fitness, reduced stress, better sleep, and restored confidence had improved his baseline erectile function. The timing change was the key that unlocked everything, Donald said. I'd been taking Viagra at the worst possible time, right after big fatty meals, and then wondering why it wasn't working. Once I started taking it on an empty stomach in the late afternoon, everything changed. It works consistently now. Side effects are minimal, and my wife and I have gotten our intimate life back. Such a simple change made all the difference. Your action plan. If you're taking Viagra or considering it, here's your action plan for optimal timing and effectiveness. First, take Viagra on an empty stomach whenever possible. Ideally, take it at least 2 to 3 hours after eating and at least 30 minutes before eating. This ensures rapid, complete absorption. Second, avoid taking Viagra immediately after large or fatty meals. If you must take it after eating, wait at least 3 to 4 hours, or choose a very light, low-fat meal. Third, time your dose to coincide with when you're rested, not exhausted. Avoid late-night dosing when you're already tired. Consider morning or early evening timing when energy levels are higher. Fourth, ensure adequate hydration by drinking plenty of water throughout the day, but avoid chugging large amounts right when taking the medication. Fifth, limit alcohol to 1 drink maximum, ideally consumed after intimacy rather than before. Alcohol significantly impairs Viagra's effectiveness. Sixth, implement nitric oxide boosting strategies, including foods rich in nitrates, L-citrulline supplementation, and regular cardiovascular exercise to enhance the medication's effectiveness. Seventh, optimize your cardiovascular health, as Viagra works better when your vascular system is healthier overall. Eighth, manage stress and anxiety through mindfulness, meditation, or therapy, as psychological factors significantly influence erectile function even with medication. Ninth, prioritize sleep of 7 to 8 hours nightly to support testosterone, vascular health, and sexual function. 10th, communicate openly with your partner about timing, medication use, and your intimate life to reduce performance pressure. 11th, work with a knowledgeable physician who can help optimize dosing, timing, and address underlying causes of erectile dysfunction rather than just prescribing medication. 12th, be aware of medication interactions, especially if you take nitrates, alpha blockers, or medications affecting liver enzymes, and discuss timing with your physician. The worst time of day to take Viagra is immediately after large or fatty meals, which delays absorption by hours, reduces the amount absorbed by up to 29%, decreases peak concentrations, and creates unpredictable, inconsistent responses. Other bad times include late at night when exhausted, when dehydrated, when drinking alcohol, and without awareness of dangerous drug interactions. The best times are on an empty stomach in the late afternoon or morning, when well rested and relaxed, when well hydrated, and when you've optimized other factors supporting erectile function. Donald's story demonstrates that the timing of when you take Viagra can be the difference between frustration and success, between debilitating side effects and minimal side effects, and between inconsistent results and reliable effectiveness. Such a simple adjustment, taking the medication on an empty stomach rather than after meals, can transform your experience completely. Don't let poor timing sabotage your results. Optimize when you take Viagra, implement the supporting strategies, and reclaim the sexual function and confidence you deserve. Thank you for watching Men's Health 365. If you found this helpful, please like, subscribe, and share.